If you would like to learn about fairy folklore, delve into modern fairy faith spirituality, and explore fun and fanciful fairy-themed events, please subscribe to Fairy Fortunes for new videos every Friday.
Hello, my fair friends. I'm Ruby Ruse, and on today's episode of Fairy Fortunes, I want to talk about the astrological sign of Libra, which occurs from September 23rd to October 22nd. It is the sign of the scales. So, traditionally speaking, this sign is concerned with equilibrium and balance and harmony. The sign has three main archetypes, the first of which is the lover, meaning that Libra embodies vulnerability. Libras tend to be people that can form deep emotional bonds, and they are very concerned about the emotional needs of other people. The second main archetype is that of the artist. Once again, is that theme of vulnerability, because in order to create art, we have to delve into our emotional life and be sensitive to the emotional life of other people. Libra people also intend to be very aesthetically sensitive. And with that is this constant movement towards beauty and working to beautify their environment and the environment of others. The final archetype is that of the peacemaker. And here's where we really see that counterbalance of equilibrium. Libras are those people who can tolerate the paradox. They learn to navigate those waters of chaos and are the calm in the center of the storm, if you will. And I thought to myself that if I looked at my work anniversary as the birth, if you will, of my life as a police officer, then I would be a Libra police officer. Your work anniversary, especially in my police municipality, is a very, very important date. I saw some very pertinent Libra themes running through my whole career as a police officer. So, for example, I feel that as a police officer throughout my 20 years in that occupation, one of my main focus points has always been to seek to understand what other people need. And I thought to myself, oh, that's just like the lover archetype, like that's straight out of that archetype. And then another lover quality that I have is that really as a police officer, I'm always seeking to establish connections and trying to form bonds with people. And definitely that idea of tolerating chaos has been a very main point throughout my career, which is very peacemaker-like, I would say. Another peacemaker quality that I feel that I have is that I'm always seeking to provide people with options. I feel like if you have choices, if you have options, then you are empowered and have some control over your crazy situation that you might be in. And another interesting thing about my career as a police officer is looking back at my 20 years, I really found that I was constantly trying to beautify my environment, both physically and metaphorically. I felt that I had to express myself, my individuality as a police officer. I became very enamored with makeup, and so I would go to work with all of these really intense makeup looks. I would do cut creases and different types of eyeliner, and I was always wearing bright colors, to the point where people that I was servicing, going to calls for service, they would be like, oh my goodness, you have such beautiful makeup on. That was totally a part of who I was as a police officer. Now, I do actually know a little bit more about Libra than some of the other signs, because Libra actually happens to be my moon sign. So what a sun sign is that's an overarching picture of who you are. It's a very basic, very generalized idea and concept of how you can describe yourself. What a moon sign does, though, is the moon sign really reflects your inner lives, what would be your hopes and your dreams and your internal life that you wouldn't necessarily share with every person that you met. The moon sign kind of reflects your soul. It's what motivates you and what drives you. sun sign is external, moon sign is more internal. And the moon sign kind of identifies what experiences are really central to your own unique and personal happiness. So here's a question for you in the audience. Do you know what your moon sign is? Can you say, oh yes, I do believe that that reflects my inner world? And if you don't know what your moon sign is, would you be able to take a look at the astrological signs and give your best guess? Like, what sign do you think reflects your inner life most accurately? So in that personal way, having Libra as my moon sign, I always felt that I really strongly identified with the artist archetype. My art is really where I find my joy. I find it in the art of divination, but also in singing and performing and writing. All these forms of artistry really are a part of what drives me as a person. How I look at art is that it is a way for me to process the world around me. It's also a way for me to understand the world. Now, while I strongly identified with the artist archetype for my Libra moon, I could also see correlations to the peacekeeper aspect of Libra. But the one archetype that I really struggled with personally was that of the lover. And the reason for that is I am one of the most solitary, independent people. I'm a little bit reclusive. Like, I am a very introverted person. So the lover archetype was really hard for me because I don't have any desire to have any kind of romantic relationship at all. But when I was looking at my police career, I thought it was really fascinating that the archetype that seemed to align most closely to how I interact with the public as a police officer was actually the lover archetype. My entire career, I have been expressly focused on trying to establish connections with people when I arrive on a scene in a 911 call and in crisis situations. The first order of business is that I try to establish a connection. And while there are a few coworkers that love to tell stories about the times that I threw down hands on people, I would definitely have to say that I'm more of a lover than a fighter when it comes to being a police officer. In my particular police station, we have a big room that has computers that we use to write reports. And when I went into this room where we have all the computers, there was another grouping of officers that was processing a person that had been arrested. And he was expressing frustration and was getting agitated. And I think another reason is that he saw me come into the room and I was a woman in authority, and so that kind of aggravated him and kind of set him off because he was in a very crazy situation. I just wanted him to get through this situation. Just because this man committed a crime, just because this man had committed a very egregious crime even, that doesn't mean that he's not a human being. So when he was asking me questions, my first impulse was, what does this person need? How can I make him more comfortable? How can I help him get through this situation today? So he and I actually started talking and about how we might be able to get him into counseling to better negotiate his very intense feelings that he was having. And he actually then even thanked me as I was leaving. I said, I actually am finished with my report now. I do have to get going back out to handle more calls for service. Is there any other questions that I can answer for you? Is there anything more that I can do to help you with your questions today? And he actually then thanked me and told me that he felt supported, and he felt that I had taken him seriously, and that he felt heard and listened to. Looking back on that now, I see that as a very Libra, very archetype of the lover aspect of my police work. Libra people tend to be able to kind of see from everybody's perspective, and I really felt that I had that as a police officer. I'm really trying to understand everybody's experience. I have a job to do. I have to arrest people that have committed crimes. But I can create space to listen to even the offender's experience. I don't have to understand why they did something, but I can give them room to share their experience with me. And I didn't have to agree with it. I wasn't there to make a ruling. I wasn't there to have judgment. But I felt that by giving them that space, giving them time to give their perspective, really helped to settle things down and really brought a lot of calm and balance to all of the situations that I was in. So in addition to noticing that I had a lot of very Libra tendencies in the strength department, I also observed that I could clearly see some of classic Libra challenges as well. I had this very intense loyalty and commitment to my job, and I also had a very strong sense of perfectionism that was kind of oppressive. It was to the point where it was almost my commitment, my loyalty, it was almost my downfall at times. I would take a lot of things home sometimes. I was so committed to the needs of other people as a police officer that there have been times in my career that I kind of lost sight of my own personal needs. Having that Libra moon and really needing artistry as a way to help me process and help me understand my own personal environment. There were times in my life where I let that go, and I let my job as a police officer take over what I needed personally. And so I let go of a lot of my artistry. There was a period of time in my life that I didn't do any singing. I didn't even really write in my journal. I wasn't doing divination. I let all of that go for the sake of the job and servicing the needs of other people. And another challenge that Libras can face is that they are often a little bit too concerned about what other people think, and particularly what other people think of them. And so I kind of had a lot of people say, oh, you're too smart to be a police officer, you're too pretty to be a police officer, you're too nice to be a police officer. I had all of these labels put on me by certain people that I encountered. And I put a little bit too much stock in that, and I let that affect me a little bit more than it should have. I think what astrology does is that it kind of gives you a framework to build a personal mythology. It gives you a way to look at your life in the context of a story, in the context of a myth, which is a way to explain phenomenon in your life. So I don't think that, oh, I was always destined to be this type of officer. I think that this is a way for me to give meaning and have some perspective and understanding of what I went through as an officer. And looking at this in the framework, like, what astrology can be used for is not like, oh, you're going to have these challenges, but here's something to think about. Here's something to use to give you perspective. Here's a framework. So, for example, moving forward into any other type of career or any other type of significant anniversary, I would want to know, like, okay, if I start a job on this day at this hour, like, what is not only the sun sign of that, but what is the moon side of that? What is the rising side of that? So another thing that I want to point out is my cool t-shirt. Did you see my t-shirt? It says fairy cup, which if you have watched my video called Coven Drama, Red Flags and More, you'll know that two people that were very vicious to me used the term fairy cop in a very derogatory way. But you know what? I've decided they're right. I am the fairy cop. And I would like you to know that you too can have a fairy cop t-shirt. Please look in the description box down below. There is a link on Teespring. It also comes in white as well and has both this gender-specific women's t-shirt available, but it also has a unisex option and also a long sleeve option. So if you want to join me in my fairy cop army, you may. And with that, have a magical day.